Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Players NIL Industry Insider Podcast. My special guest today, Roy Kessel from the Sports Philanthropy Network. Roy, welcome to the podcast.
Mark, thanks for having me on. Appreciate that.
Well, we've known each other a couple of years now, which is unbelievable. NIL is 3 years old, and we probably met 2 years ago. We had lunch in Manhattan Beach, California, and we talked about your vision for the Sports Philanthropy Network. I was just launching the Players NIL, and we teach 5 pillars of education here. Number 4 is community service and philanthropy. And so it's always been a piece of what I do and connected to all of what you do. But this is kind of an open mic situation, so we're just going to have a conversation. It's part of this new series that we put together. So I have a really quick and simple question. Why is sports philanthropy important?
Well, Mark, I think sports philanthropy is important because in our view, giving back to the world is something that's important for everybody. Regardless of where you are in life and what your situation is, I think everybody has the capacity to give back to society in some way. And so how do we help facilitate that? How do we create a culture of philanthropy and really work in the sports environment in particular with the athletes and the sports organizations to embed that value within the context of what they're doing?
Yeah. What are the benefits of sports philanthropy? Who wins?
I think everybody wins. I think one of the things you see is that in many cases, you hear the stories of the people that give the most get the most, right? And when you take individuals to either volunteer in the community or to participate and support particular causes, we really try and distinguish opportunities away from having athletes be simply celebrities. And when I say that, historically, most athletes have been conditioned to believe that they're good for 4 things when they're not competing. And number 1 is signing autographs. Number 2 is taking photos with people. Number 3 is playing in golf outings. And last is going to fundraising dinners, right? And those are all celebrity functions. They're fun. They're fun for the athlete. They're fun for the people that are attending, but they typically don't transform lives, right? They don't change communities. And so how can we use that power? Really, it's a disservice to the athletes who have an enormous passion for their communities. They really want to do things to make a difference. So how can we train them and guide them to be able to do that and let them understand that they're going to get a lot out of it too? And I'll give an example. We had just last week, we had a volunteer program at a book bank in Chicago called Bernie's Book Bank, and they distribute 2.5 million books a year to schools and organizations around the Chicago area. And it's an amazing operation. You wouldn't believe what they do there. And there's no way to explain it until you walk in there and you see the scale of the operation, and you see pallets and pallets of books, and you see bins and bins of books that are being sorted and graded and distributed. And it's an incredible operation. And so taking athletes to see things like that. But there's no right or wrong answer about how to do it. I think each person, I think one of the struggles with the athletes is they need help understanding that their voice and their passions are what they should pursue. Too often, what I see is that the athletes are kind of pushed or chased to give money or time to a cause that somebody else is passionate about. And the athlete likes that person, right? They might like Mark, they might like Roy. So, but that doesn't mean that the cause that I'm working on or the cause you're working on is what they're passionate about. So how do we help them develop their voice and their comfort to be able to say, like, my passion is food insecurity. My passion is mental health. My passion is LGBTQ rights, whatever it may be, and use their voice to support that cause.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty heady stuff. We have 2 principles here. One is how do you use athletics to better your life? And I think we're talking about athletes that have done that, right? They've got to some level of success, high school, college, perhaps professional. The second principle of our business is how do you use athletics to better the lives of the people around you? And that has always been, to me, you're my biggest connection, because that's what we're trying to do. So I teach personal branding. I teach digital marketing, influencer branding, storytelling. And one of the words that always comes up, and it's a simple word, but it's really hard to express, is authenticity. And I think that's what you're speaking about, is these athletes need to find an authentic cause, right? But one of the challenges that I see is that, and I'm generalizing now, a lot of these athletes have been coddled since they're very young, right? They've been given things and put on a pedestal and treated differently than everyone else. And they don't really relate to the everyday person, to the person that's struggling. What are you doing, or how do you make that connection when you work with athletes that have been earned so much and given so much? How do you get them to realize that the whole world isn't like them?
It's interesting, Mark, because I think most professional athletes don't come from an environment where they have had everything when they've been growing up. Most of them come from an environment where they've had to overcome a lot of obstacles and a lot of challenges throughout their life. And I think what happens is once they reach, that mid to upper level of professional sports, right? And they're making 7, 8 figures a year, right? They start developing that distance. But when you go back, one of my favorite things every year is when we're at the Pro Football Hall of Fame enshrinement, and you hear the stories of the individuals that are getting into the Hall of Fame, right?
Mm.
These are people at the top level of the game, but you listen to what they went through in their life, and you listen to the challenges that they overcome, and you listen to the stories where literally or figuratively they had somebody grab them by the back of the collar and yank them back on track because they were wandering off, whether it was not taking school seriously, whether it was potentially getting involved with gangs or drugs or other negative influences. Somewhere along the way, they had a coach or a teacher or a teammate that really set them back on the right course. And I think most of these athletes, male and female, everywhere, want to do good. They really have that passion. And so how can we carve out some of that time that is spent in their career, right? As they progress, high school, college, pro, after they're done with their career, and leverage that, harness the relationships they have, harness the power and experience that they have, and teach them how to make an impact.
Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting point. There's a pyramid, right? We start with this broad base of young athletes, junior high, high school, college, high level college, professional. And at the top of that would be the athletes that have completed their professional career, which is in either a smaller pillar that still have a level of celebrity. Have you had any success with retired athletes giving back to the community? How does that work?
Many of the retired athletes give back. They have more time, right? And we're trying to change the culture of what giving back means so that it's not defined only as playing in golf outings or going to dinners, right? That it's defined as really enmeshing themselves in the community, helping teach things, right? You're talking about the programs and the modules that the Players NIL has, right? One of the things that we see is if Roy or Mark talk, right, the kids may listen one way. If you get current or former professional athletes speaking, even college athletes speaking, right, the eyes light up in a different perspective. And so when we were at the Super Bowl in Phoenix, we did a financial literacy program at a Title I high school there, 500 kids, and we had a dozen athletes, all kinds of different sports, male and female, telling the stories. And, the biggest names were not the ones that necessarily received the most interest and accolades, from the kids. But the kids are very interested in learning, and the stories have a huge impact when they get to hear them up close and in personal. And I think one of the challenges we have in today's world is, right, we're recording this on Zoom. This is great because you're in Philadelphia, I'm in Chicago, right? We can't just be together in a few minutes, and hopefully we'll get together in person soon. But the power of being in person is nothing like nothing else that exists, right? You and I, as you said, sat down for lunch, and we were there for, I think, over 2 hours, talking about all kinds of different issues. You're going to get on a Zoom with somebody, it's going to be half an hour, maybe it's going to be 45 minutes. And I think one of the things that gets lost in the virtual environment is the importance of kids having that connection. So when we did that program, it was a couple hours of the kids listening to these stories from these dozen athletes, and the kids were amazing. But then after the event, we gave the kids posters to get signed by all of the athletes that were there. We had Little Caesars come in as a sponsor for lunch, and the athletes were the ones serving pizza to the kids. So the kids
Nice.
were getting an opportunity to talk to them while they're getting their food. And it was just something that you can't replicate very easily, right? And you hope that the messaging becomes stronger. We all hear so many messages a day, right? You hear the advertising numbers, you're in digital marketing, that that's something that we get bombarded with on a daily basis. What cuts through the clutter? Things with a strong emotional connection cut through the
Hmm.
clutter, right? Things with
Hmm.
music cut through the clutter. And so that intensity of experience is something that makes a big difference.
Yeah. How has name, image, and likeness, which is now 3+ years old, affected your philosophy, your techniques, your target audience, your messaging? Has it changed what you do? Because you've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, I think that there's been some nuances. Obviously, NIL has we'll call it evolved, right? There's almost a new version of NIL every 3 or 4 months, the way things have been going. Um, and I remember before NIL even started, um, Mark Emmert from the NCAA was still, in my view, putting his head in the sand and not recognizing that there needed to be a change. He still wanted to stand strong on the soapbox of we're going to protect amateurism. And it was already way past a point where that was ever going to happen, right? The Olympics survived a transition to professional sports. College sports will survive a transition to compensating athletes. But the model has changed, and you and I have spoken about this many times. The current evolution of NIL really has nothing to do with name, image, and likeness. Almost all of the real money that is being paid to athletes is for what's called pay for play, right? Come to my school, come to Alabama instead of Auburn, come to Ohio State instead of Michigan, or any variation of that. And so athletes are getting, I think, a distorted perspective of what their true NIL value is, because it's not about putting Mark's face on a billboard or on a calendar. You may remember when Steve Alford got suspended because he let a sorority calendar use his face to sell calendars back in the day. And it's ludicrous when we look back on some of these things. I think NIL is great. I think the players, the free market should dictate what it comes to. If you've got a market valuation that people are interested in and you can help benefit a brand, that's terrific. From our perspective, we developed a model called NIL for Good, which is really to work with the athletes and the college influencers to help them understand and identify the benefits of using their name, image, and likeness to support a cause and to be a spokesperson for a cause. When we're down at the NIL summit each year, we get an opportunity to cover that and interview many of the college athletes and record interviews with them about what their causes are. And Caleb Bradham works with them very closely to help hone that pitch, because we want them to understand, you talked about personal branding, your cause that you champion is something that's going to stay with you long beyond the days of your college athletic career. Right? The NCAA had a whole advertising campaign of everybody going pro in something other than sports, right? And for most people, that's true. Very few make professional sports. But now with NIL in college, you can make money. There's some amazing examples. And frankly, most of the more successful NIL athletes have been women because they've been much more sophisticated and advanced in the way that they've used social media to leverage their identity and brands to get paid for NIL. The superstar football players or basketball players will get their money solely because they're on TV and they're stars in those sports. But the women athletes have really been much more creative about how they've used their brands and how they've been able to connect and identify opportunities for building that. And so working with causes helps the individuals understand that I'm now going to be outspoken about my personal passion. It's not my school that gets to dictate what it is, right? It's not my family that gets to dictate. It's not my teammates. This is what's personal to me. And I'm going to be outspoken about this cause, and I'm going to build my brand around that. And we've seen some terrific examples.
When I speak to young people, I often talk about community service and philanthropy and the benefits up and down the food chain, including, professional opportunities, creating networks, all the things that we kind of just touched on. And to me, in recent history, the prime example is Damar Hamlin from the Buffalo Bills, which almost 2 years ago now had a medical event on national television on a football field, and I guess for all intents and purposes did die, and they revived him. I had never heard of Damar Hamlin. I didn't know anything about him. He was a Pittsburgh high school kid, University of Pitt, Buffalo Bill, and he had been involved since high school in raising money for kind of like a Toys for Tots program, delivering toys to needy children and underprivileged kids at Christmas time. And his goal at the time of his medical event was to raise $2,500, $2,500. That goal got blown out of the water once people knew what he was passionate about. And it totally changed his life, not only obviously the medical event, but the celebrity that he got for doing good and using philanthropy. And I believe that ended up way over $10 million what they raised. So to me, that's a great recent example of how using a personal brand for charity and good benefited a lot of people, including the athlete. Long term, his life has changed forever. Roy, you're doing a great job. I know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. I know what it's like to be a pioneer and an industry leader. I'm going to ask you this question. It's personal. What does Roy Kessel get out of all of this?
Well, I get the satisfaction of knowing that we can help amplify the work that's going on. There's incredible stories. You talked about Damar Hamlin, right? He's so fortunate that he was in the middle of a football field, because if he had been almost anywhere else in the entire world when that episode happened, somebody would not have been able to get to him in that limited number of seconds to save his life, right? If he'd been on a golf course or a shopping mall or walking down the street. And so it's amazing, as you said, right? And there's great examples, whether it's J.J. Watt and the work that he did after the hurricane in Houston. There's incredible examples of athletes using their fame. Work Done has done an incredible job, with homes for single mothers. There's so many things, but one of the things that we really like is telling those stories, right? Giving a voice to this whole sector. What do I get out of it? I get a lot of satisfaction of meeting incredible people that are changing the world, meeting people that have that passion to do good. And really, I love the challenge of every day waking up and knowing that I'm going to interact with great people, not only in the US, but literally around the world that are doing this work. And the challenge of trying to figure out, how can we help? What can we do? Who do we know that can support those efforts? And in a sense, being that matchmaker of pulling together the resources and the people and the technologies that might help an organization amplify their impact.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And I think that's what makes entrepreneurs great, is it becomes personal, right? This is something that you wake up in the morning and you're driven by. It's not just a job that you're punching the time clock, literally or figuratively, to do. And I think that's what makes, your program with Kayla so successful. I want to congratulate you on all that you've done. I'm sure in your mind you feel like there's much more to do, that you probably feel, again, like entrepreneurs, we always feel insignificant. Like, I should have done this, I could have done this, I want to do this. But once in a while, it's nice to have somebody say, great job. And from the players NIL, I want to say, great job, Roy and Kayla, and thank you for all that you do.
Well, Mark, we appreciate the opportunity to be on here and share the story of the work that we're doing. And, Kayla and I talk about it almost every day, about how fortunate we are and how we have the best job in the world because of the caliber of people that we engage with. And you're high on that list in terms of people that we respect and we know are doing things for the right reasons and really working to transform lives.
Well, great. Thank you very much. We're part of the Mutual Admiration Society. So thank you very much for being a guest on the podcast. And we wish you nothing but success and look forward for updates down the road.
Thank you, Mark, and we appreciate that time and just want to remind all of the viewers and listeners here to live generously.